2020. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Ms. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Gajewski.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Nordine here. Mr. Byer.
Here.
Mr. Weed.
Here. Any agenda additions?
Yes. Under other, I would like to put 6 for the annual groundwater regulatory fee.
Any others? Is there a motion for the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda with the addition.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, first public comment period. For this one, have to fill out a card, give it to the superintendent. There's a 4-minute time limit. When you come up, please introduce yourself. Do we have any cards?
No.
On to the consent agenda. Any comments regarding the minutes of January 24th and January 27th?
So I provided an update as far as the 1/27/20 meeting minutes, and this is the bottom of page 2 and at the top of page 3. It was for under the action item 2020 appropriations adjustment for trackless sidewalk snow machine. And the last line says, Mr. Palmer expressed confusion and Mr. Nordine reiterated the calculation provided by Mr. Schaefer did not appear to be accurate, and that the assumption that Mr. Schaefer's calculation was correct seemed to have caused confusion. So in there, I have several things that I noted to be added in there. The bottom line and what I want to be able to provide clarification of the township board members, the previous amount stated as far as what was in the bank on the January 13th, 2020 meeting, as far as $49,534.78. That was the bank balance as far as the DDA checking account, and that was the amount stated by the treasurer. That's actually a combination of 2 funds, and it's DDA Fund 248 represents the TIF capture, and DDA Operating Fund 252 represents the 2 mills enacted for properties within the DDA district. The DDA Operating Fund 252 has restrictions on what this money can be used for, and Fund 252 cannot be applied to the purchase of that trackless MT7 snow machine. Could not be counted towards resources available to apply towards the equipment purchase. Therefore, the available resources to apply to the trackless MT7 snow machine from the DDA 248, Fund 248, is much lower than the amount stated as the bank balance. The calculations provided to the board of 2019 beginning fund balance plus 2019 revenue subtract the 2019 expenditures was to ensure that the 2019 DDA Fund 248 expenditures did not exceed the 2019 total resources available for appropriation. And so if for some reason we spent more money than what we had available, we would end up with a negative fund balance. And what we don't want to do is end up with a negative fund balance in 248. And so that's what I was trying to be able to carve out there. And then the treasurer provided here the actual amounts.
Cash amounts. Yeah.
Cash amounts associated with 248 versus 252. And so that,
And the bank balance as of today.
and so that should help clarify, there's not anything missing. It's a combination of two funds for 248 and 252 as far as the cash balance versus what's actually going to be available to appropriate for that piece of equipment. I just wanted to be able to provide that clarification so everybody understands.
So this cash summary that Ms. McGuire just provided us here just a few minutes ago, this shows the two balances with 248 and 252, right? But you're adding the 8,000?
Because that check hasn't cleared. So that one gets added back to the 248 number of 15,000, I believe it says on there.
Yeah, 15,000, but if the check hasn't cleared, that would be what the balance is, isn't it? 15?
No, because that's the general ledger. It's already been entered into the general ledger, and I provided you a copy of the bank balance, of the actual bank balance of today too, and that brings it closer to that number. It's off like about $8 and something, but I was more concerned
So the
about,
15,109 and 248 is with 8,000 taken off.
what I gave you is 15,109 is in 248,
Yes.
right now.
But that's without the 8,000 coming out.
That is not, I had to add that back in because it was taken out of this. It hasn't cleared the bank yet.
So that's what I'm saying, the 15 is taking into account the 8,000.
The 15,000,
In other words, it was 23,000 in there. You've taken out 8, so it brings it to 15.
it's already been taken out of the 15,000, so you have to add it back into it to balance it to your checkbook in the bank balance.
Okay.
Yes. And then 252 is separate, is the money that we can't touch for
Right,
the
right.
Trackless anyways. We can
Right.
use it for the Hushra building,
Now the-
not Hushra, the
The
Artisan.
252 we can use for paying utilities and that sort of thing?
that sort of thing. I'd have to go back and look at the actual millage language, but I believe it's just utilities and some other small things, but has to do right with that building, with the Artisan Hall.
Right, because I noticed in reviewing some of the old bills, there's a number of bills that are charged at 248 that are actually utility bills.
Yep, and I did some research on those, and that was during the time frame that the DDA checkbook was not with the treasurer's office. It was with the DDA, and they were coded incorrectly.
Okay. Okay. So I guess bottom line is where the confusion was, when we were talking about balances, I was talking about a fund balance for 248, and you may have been talking about the bank balance
I was,
for the checking
cash.
account, which shows way more
Both,
money, and that's what
yeah.
Mr. Nardine was referring to, I think, as well at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So it's, the money that we can use is 248, and that's considerably less than,
Then the whole complete balance, yes, that's correct. Yep.
all right, very good.
So we received a DDA payment thing in the first meeting in January. Are there more bills that are coming in, or was that a late arrival?
That was it was definitely a late arrival. I asked Bill Hamlin, because it was, John sends out a notice to all the department heads saying to get your bills turned in for the end of the year. Bill came in to sign bills, and I asked because he is affiliated with Enchanted Blooms. He said, "Oh, yeah, I think there's one on her desk." And he went back and got it, and yeah, and it was from September or some time frame.
Okay.
I've been,
Well, the one that we got in January for the $2,130 from Enchanted Blooms. We had that one. What's the one from September?
that was $25.39 or something like that. It was just super recently. I've reached out to Rogers Nursery, Hargers, and Wellman's to try to get with them to make sure when they're closing out their books, they don't go, "Oh, by the way, we forgot to bill you for this." Haven't been able to reach anybody at Hargers. There's nobody answering or returning messages. And I'm tracking down the personal phone number for Rogers Nursery.
Okay. So we got 2 invoices from Enchanted Blooms that were late, and then you've checked with others to make sure there aren't any others.
Yeah. Trying to reach out to as many people that we've dealt with in the past to make sure they get them turned in.
No, there was a, maybe I'm confused, but there was a check to Enchanted Blooms. The check was written in June and reported in December, 21.
That's one of the ones that Aaron was just speaking to.
But the check was written in June.
But we got the bill in December?
Got the bill in March.
Of last year?
Yeah.
There was like I said, there was a time period that, during that time period, I didn't have the checkbook, so I'd have to go back and look at that.
Because I've got records showing, checks that were written, and 242 doesn't show up, nor does 2425, which is the one which was written in July.
All the bank recs balance, so if you could have asked me that today, I could have brought that information tonight.
Well, those checks have been accounted for. It's just I don't understand how we'd write a check in June and then it wouldn't show up till December.
I guess I don't know that either because I don't have that information in front of me right at the moment.
Okay.
All right, anything else regarding the minutes?
Only that this clarification is what I've been striving for the board members and the public to have a clear understanding of what the situation regarding the DDA money is. I think this clarification provided by Mr. Schaefer on the board table, that last paragraph, I agree with, and I think it's what the board as a whole and the public needs to hear so that, the cash standing of the DDA or any account of the township is clear. So that's what I appreciate that. Thank you. And as for the changes to the minutes, I try to stay away from direct quotes. If the board sees fit, that's fine with me. What the board wants to include in minutes and what I include to put in front of the board are different things. But because if you start direct quoting, it becomes very cumbersome. This is a unique situation. And to clarify or to rephrase or correct maybe my comments that Mr. Schaefer is speaking to here about Mr. Schaefer's calculation potentially being incorrect. Upon further consideration, a better way for me to say it may be you may have been calculating what you wanted to. It was just not. The confusion may have been elsewhere in the reconciling of your calculation and the number Ms. McGuire added.
Cash and fund balance.
Yeah, again.
Two different things.
So, those are my comments.
Are we going to replace a statement in the minutes with this paragraph or supplement it, or what are we doing?
That's up to the
I
board.
got it.
Again, I
Okay, good.
share my thoughts on whether or not to include direct quotes. Again, I see this as a unique situation, so I understand, but that's for the board to decide.
I'll make a motion to include this document to be included in the minutes.
Do you want a second before I ask a question? Okay, to be clear, would the board, or do you, in making the motion, want this document included within the minutes, or what I believe I took Mr. Schaefer to say is to add his second section here to the minutes?
Right, the proposed language.
Okay, add that language
Yes.
into the minutes document.
Right.
I have a motion.
Support if you need it.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Byer. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the minutes. Do we have any comments regarding the payment of bills?
I have two. Once, a question, just something to explain, I don't understand what it is. On page 18 of the packet, under unallocated, it says Oscoda Township Treasure Tax Fund, 2019 winter. There's 4 of those. I'm just curious what that is.
Let me get to page 18. Come on. Oh, I can't do it that way. Unallocated.
I believe it's page 18.
Tax payments.
Oh, it is, they are chargebacks from the county when there's board of review corrections that are made. They send us a bill and we have to send that money back to them that we've collected.
So this goes back to the county.
It goes back to the county, yep.
Okay,
Because
all right.
they've in turn, because it's probably for a tax bill, well, it was for 2019. So it's a tax bill that they had to make changes on. We've already collected the money and dispersed it, so now we have to pay them back for it.
Pay the difference.
Right.
Okay, I got you. The other question I had is, in the payment of bills, there are 3 payments to Bell Equipment for the $46,937.33 from Fund 236, 245, and 265. But I didn't see anything in there for the $8,001 for the 4th component of that.
That check is written and it was prepared, that's why I had it written on that other statement there. It's not in this bill payment one, because it's in the one that I send you guys every 2 months with all the other funds listed on it. Like I do trust and agency, DDA checks, when we make bond payments, those sort of things. We don't do that many of them, so I was doing them on like every second month. I'd run that report. You had one in the board packet two times ago, actually.
But if we're approving payment of bills, shouldn't we have all of the bills that we're approving to pay? This is.
We
we
approved it at
that
the
amount-
board
we
meeting.
approved that amount.
Right, so I don't need to, yeah. So if you want to wait and not approve it, I can bring it to the next meeting or do it as a prepaid as well. But you already have board approval to pay it, so. Usually the ones that are board approved, we just go ahead and write them and they show up on the prepaids, that sort of thing. And
I
this one
noticed
just didn't.
in other board packets, you provided us with a list of, a whole list of checks that were paid out of like the 248 and 252 in
Right.
previous
Every couple months,
Yes.
yeah. Because I just didn't think,
So this will be showing up in a
in,
sometime
probably, yeah,
in the future. Okay,
this is
all right. That was all.
probably in March. Yep, no problem.
Any other comments?
If you want it every time, I can do it, but there won't always be a check.
Hopefully we can drain down that 248 and 252.
I'll be ready to, yes.
and get rid of that.
Heck, yeah. Had enough of that.
All right, so then I would need a motion for this. Is that still your motion?
That's still my motion.
Okay. Still, okay. Motion by Ms. McGuire and support by Mr. Byer. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yeah.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes,
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Subcommittee reports and project updates, the recabling and phone system.
Yeah, so really all we're doing is just driving the network traffic through the new connection and establishing confidence with it. It's behaved perfectly. We've had no issues whatsoever. There was unrelated to the internet itself. Mr. Nardine pointed out that there was something that hadn't been updated by one of our contractors, IT Right, that affected some email that was sent to people with their pay stubs when they were going to external email addresses. And they resolved that quickly and
Easily.
thank you. And then he told me about it afterwards. So really, that's the only fallout we've seen from the migration. And so all the secured links to Saginaw County are up. The police are on the new internet, which is a drastically huge improvement for them because they were struggling with very slow internet connection to do their police reports and to do their searches. So it's been a great coup for them. So we're getting to the point where we're looking to schedule a date to have the phones installed. And so, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we had enough time to make sure that everything was good on this internet and that ATI was thumbs up. And then we have a 10-day fixed cutover period where when we submit the request, 10 business days count forward from that for Charter to process our request to relinquish the phone numbers in the accounts. And then they end service on the same day that ATI would pick up the service. So it has to be a tightly coordinated date with not just the township, but with ATI and IT Right. So I will be back at the next meeting with that date.
We've had a couple of people in the building complain that they can't get their voicemails to work.
Now that I heard about today. Tammy mentioned that. I have nothing to
Today's
do
the
with
first
that.
day that, yeah, okay,
Yeah, I heard about it this morning. We aren't touching the old phone system.
okay,
I have no hands on that whatsoever.
not a problem. I just thought I'd ask, I didn't know if it had something to do with that or not.
No, I don't know whether or not Tammy was able to resolve it. She mentioned that it's never happened before, so she doesn't know how. Do you?
In the VoIP?
No,
The,
there's no VoIP. It's the current system right now.
Okay.
The voicemail, suddenly people's passwords didn't seem to work. Is that what your experience was? Do you know whether she was able to get that?
I didn't get to touch base with her at the end of the day.
That's fine.
James
Okay.
was the other one.
Yeah, Jane and somebody else was what I heard from Tammy this morning. But she was handling it herself, so I just don't have an update for
Okay,
you.
I didn't know if she reached out to you.
Yeah, just informationally. I didn't have any information to provide her.
All right, update on the Michigan Launch Initiative.
All right, so the Economic Improvement Director and I went to Cape Canaveral last week, and we have been informed that the new date for the announcement on the horizontal component for the Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Michigan Launches Initiative will be next Tuesday, the February 18th. And so we are hopeful that the announcement goes in the community's favor. Obviously, we will know next Tuesday, the 18th, what the next steps are. But it was very interesting to see, meet some of the other players associated with the spaceport down there that are currently operating in Cape Canaveral, and what that ecosystem would look like for the next steps in the spaceport. So a little over a week, next Tuesday, the 18th, and that's when that announcement is supposed to happen.
So it all comes down to the 18th.
Correct.
Thank you.
For horizontal.
For
For horizontal, correct.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
We've heard
If they
that.
don't delay. That's right, yeah. Right.
We, obviously on the agenda later on, we have on there to be able to, just like we responded to the horizontal component and the vertical component, there is a new component for satellite command and a communication center. And so I'm asking for the board's approval to be able to submit a letter of interest and see what that RFI contains.
All right, does anybody have anything else? The MLI is supposed to let me know when and where for that announcement, and I will probably be in Lansing for that, along with the PFAS documentary that's on the next day and the Dark Waters movie for PFAS on the following day, along with a PFAS conference on that same day as the 20th. All right, then on to the superintendent report. Amendment to the agreement with Great Lakes Fireworks.
All right, so the proposed amendment to the Great Lakes Firework Agreement is patterned after the most recent iteration of the contract and provides for a $10,000 budget, which can be increased, a one-year term, and an additional fee of $500 to be paid out of the general fund 101-299-880.000 community promotion, which covers ancillary personnel costs and hosting the show. Your packet contains the proposed amendment to the Great Lake Firework Agreement, email communication with Great Lake Fireworks, and the original 2017 contract. The amendment to the agreement with Great Lake Fireworks requires Township Board approval.
Comments?
Couple of questions. What are the actual changes? The 10,000 or the added 500?
It mimics, the dates are the dates are different.
Oh, that's all.
That's all.
Second question, if I'm correct, we usually get a contribution from Oscoda on this, and that's
It's still the plan.
still the plan.
So we have to spend the 10,500 and then get reimbursed.
Okay. All right.
Have we heard anything from the Friends of the Fireworks?
I have not.
Any other comments?
Nobody's noticed any type of damage at all to the pier launching area at all?
I think they cover the sides, actually. They have in the past.
I think that's right.
I think they do.
I think you're right.
With fire
Like-
protected.
Like kind of tarps. Yep.
I have not noticed any damage to the pier.
Okay. All right. I think Bill would be the guy to go out there and just really check it out, you know, but.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Wrong bill.
Other bill.
Oh, yeah, okay.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the amendment to the agreement with Great Lakes Fireworks.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Modine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Tarp assembly on the dump truck.
All right, so your packet contains a memo dated February 3rd from the DPW supervisor concerning the tarp assembly for the dump truck. Your packet contains the invoice from Northern Truck Repair for $2,672.50. Have to be paid from the general fund. 101-265 is Township Hall and Grounds 931.000, and have to be paid from the Water Fund 591-000-931.000. The tarp is required to haul loads and used frequently by both DPW and F&V operation. This request requires Township Board approval.
Comments?
This is for the newest dump truck we got.
The newest dump truck we got.
How come F&B isn't paying for it? They're the one that destroyed it.
Do you know anything about that?
I
Don't know nothing about that. They're the ones that damaged it.
What information is there?
They were loading, and the backhoe wasn't up high enough, and hit the side and twisted it and everything else. Last word I got. I see it was damaged, but I didn't realize $2,000 worth. Might be
Do they make a
worthwhile
report when things like that happen?
checking. It was last,
Seems like we should.
well, it was probably August, September, maybe earlier. last year.
Do you have a recommendation?
Table this for a couple of weeks and check it out a little better?
Yeah, I would table it and have, let's check into it, find out just what it, if it's replacing the whole thing, or if it's a repair. This sounds like a repair.
Really?
I don't think that costs more than $2,000 for a whole brand new piece.
Yeah,
Never replaced one, I don't know.
so it's a roll-tight tarp system, that's the biggest component. And, so the tarp, the system,
Yeah,
the
it
metal
was rolled
system,
up.
that's the largest component, is the tarp system. The actual tarp and supplies are 175 versus almost 1,750 for the actual frame and the tarp structure.
Bill Hamlin's memo says that it's a repair to
Yeah,
get it
that's what I
replaced.
mean, it says
Yeah.
a repair, but
Well, actually, no, I'm saying it's two different words. It says I took it into Northern Truck Repair to get it replaced. Northern Truck Repair is the proper noun, the name of the establishment, but it's a replacement that he's describing. So it sounds like this is a replacement, not a repair.
yeah, I'd recommend we table it so we find out what they're gonna do, repair it or replace it.
Postpone?
And how it happened.
And, yeah, they should be reporting that somehow.
Yeah.
I'd like to second that motion.
Is that a motion, Martin?
Yes,
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes?
Ms. McGuire.
Is it including the investigation or report to what happened too?
We're already in voting.
Oh,
So I
Yes.
asked Martin, I said, check out how it happened.
yeah, check
And
out
he
how
said
it
yes.
happened.
Okay,
That's all part of
alright.
it, Jamie.
all right, okay. Just want to make sure, I didn't know if you had to you had to say it or not, so, okay.
You have a vote?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes,
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Approve submission of a letter of interest to the MAMA.
All right. So your packet contains a press release from Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Association dated the 28th of January 2020 concerning the Satellite Command and Control Communications Center. MAMA is accepting letters of interest through Friday, that's this Friday the 14th. The Township Board previously approved a letter of interest to MAMA concerning the opportunities associated with both the horizontal launch and the vertical launch facilities. I'm seeking the Township Board's approval to move forward with submitting a letter of interest prior to Friday the 14th. So just as we submitted a letter of interest, they came back and gave us an RFI, or a request for information, which was a whole detail of all the information that they need to be able to make a decision on the site associated with satellite command and control communications. So just as we went through that letter of interest to responding to the RFI, this is to submit that letter of interest. If they choose us as far as the RFI, then we will get the RFI at a later date.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the submission of a letter of interest to MAMA concerning the Satellite Command and Control Communications Center.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes,
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Row proposal for Old Orchard Park erosion drainage improvements design engineering.
All right, so your packet contains a proposal from Rowe concerning the Old Orchard Park erosion / drainage improvement design engineering services. The project consists of designing soil erosion control measures to hinder erosion of the shoreline under the existing boat dock and drainage improvements in the vicinity of the playground beach area. The 3 tasks total $20,000 to be paid out of the Old Orchard Park Capital Improvement Fund 218 000-984.000 capital improvement expense associated with completing the design engineering services through project advertisement and bidding.
Comments?
Is this gonna be teared down or just one wall? You have any idea?
I know the first, when they say topographical survey, they need to go out there and do borings out there to figure out what is the makeup. What are the components out there?
All sand.
That's what they need to corroborate. Is there anything underneath? Have there been previous improvements made that they need to rectify?
So this isn't a matter of just replacing the wall that's there. They're recommending starting from scratch.
There used to be a tiered thing before. I don't know what shape it's in or if there's anything left out there, but
It's washing away.
I went out there and looked at it last year, and that's a very steep hill where the stairs are going down to that. So it's no wonder that heavy rain, you get a tremendous run of water down there, and you can see that it's washing away underneath the whole thing there. Something needs to be done with it.
This is budgeted, this is a expected cost for this project?
Yeah, so as part of, you'll see Fund 218 is a little bit higher than normal appropriations, and that's because we're guesstimating, okay, design engineering services, we don't know what those bids are gonna be. So we have higher than normal in there. The only other thing besides the total appropriations for 218 is to buy a side-by-side.
Did you know if Al talked or if Roe has any indication that we gotta do that according to Eagle or DNR requirements for erosion that won't wash down in the river?
I think that's all part of the actual
You
proposal.
think they talked to him already?
I
It
don't know.
didn't sound like it.
I don't know if Roe has spoken to Eagle.
Okay. 'Cause that's my concern.
I can ask him.
Do you believe they needed to before we approve this, or?
Well, they're gonna have to go by the guidelines, no matter if we approve it or not.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Any other comments?
We would also have to get approving from Consumers Power, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
also, yeah.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal from Rowe for the Old Orchard Park erosion and drainage improvements at an amount not to exceed $20,000.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, I have a report for the storm sewer management plan. Air Force owned the storm sewers located on the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base. Then those storm sewers were conveyed to the township after base closure. However, the storm sewer's only user is the Air Force. Discharge permits for the Air Force were issued by the Water Quality Department of Eagle. Neither the Air Force nor Eagle coordinated use of those storm sewers with the township prior to and after them being allowed to discharge processed water into them. To mitigate maintenance costs on township property owners, the township negotiated the Air Force's use of the storm sewer from discharge of the Arrow Street GAC plant with a monthly payment plan that started in 2018. During the negotiations, the Air Force demonstrated a strong desire to not pay a fee for the use of the storm sewer despite a 2010 easement document showing the Air Force agreed to pay reasonable costs for using utilities. And despite their continual use of the system contributing significantly to its degradation, and despite them already paying these kinds of fees at other municipalities. We're now seeing the same resistance again regarding the Air Force discharging into the Mission Street storm sewer system. Their letter dated 24 January 2020 is the same tactic they used in 2018. In addition, at the time of this writing, the Air Force is delinquent in their payments of the Arrow Street discharge by 3 months. Have you received any payments since then?
No.
The Air Force does have the option to use groundwater injection instead of utilizing the storm sewers. In years past, when the Mission Street storm sewer would become clogged, flooding would occur due to the Air Force continual discharge into the system. The Air Force has been asked to assist in paying for repairs, however, they declined each time. In the letter from the Air Force dated 24 January 2020, they stated they must evaluate our evaluation of costs since they must be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. Quoted from them. However, the township must also be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars mandated by Michigan state law. This means that usage of the storm sewer of processed water must be paid for by the entities who are discharging into the system, thusly causing additional wear beyond their intended purpose of stormwater. Please see the attached supervisor's report from 2018 showing how much water the Air Force is permitted to discharge from the Arrow Street plant into the storm sewers compared to how much water flows through our wastewater system. In other words, the Air Force is discharging significantly more water into the storm sewers than we even use for our entire wastewater system. The storm sewers are in need of expensive repairs and will eventually require replacement at great expense, the full extent of which will need to be thoroughly evaluated with a storm sewer asset management plan. This plan is also needed to justify to the state that the municipality is managing its infrastructure appropriately. However, since our soil type drains rather quickly, the storm sewers are generally not needed as washouts can convey the storm water to closely located drainage areas. In relation to what I just read here on the asset management plan, we've had a lot of emphasis since the Flint water crisis and some other municipalities who've had infrastructure issues. There have been a lot of legal emphasis lately on municipalities ensuring they have plans together that they are managing their infrastructure appropriately, long-term plans. So we went through the SAW grant process and we have a 20-year plan regarding our wastewater system. There's going to be requirements coming down soon for having a drinking water, municipal water infrastructure asset management plan, which we're in the process of beginning that, we're beginning that process here soon. The same is coming across for storm water systems, because if the flooding occurs, then the township can incur significant liability if that flooding affects private property. So I just had a briefing last week regarding the extent to which storm sewers are going to become critical for municipalities to manage for the long term, which we should be doing anyways, but a lot of municipalities have neglected it because typically what's underground is forgotten about. So I have proposed some options for the board, which is create a storm sewer asset management plan and include a refurbishment, replacement of the system in the capital improvement plan. 2 is to create a storm sewer reduction plan to eliminate ongoing maintenance costs associated with the infrastructure and minimize flooding liabilities derived from Air Force activities, or a combination of both plans. So what I provided to the board when I got a quote on Friday, these are rather short notices to the engineering companies when I requested quotes on doing these asset management plans or reduction plans. We have the one from Rowe that you received on Friday, which shows a drainage study at $59,700 and an asset management plan at $62,800. And then I received a Fleece and Vandenbrink one that I put down in front of everybody now. I just received that late this afternoon, which has several items for GPS locating, structure assessment, pipe assessment, AMP report, GIS mapping, with an estimate of $472,811. So with the Air Force not willing to pay for the system, using the system, I don't see us having a need for having the system, but we won't know for sure until this analysis is done. So then that would also lead to my next question is, how do we handle the Air Force not paying for using the systems if they do have other alternatives?
I have a question. So back to your first question, though. So if we talk about a reduction plan, we're talking about a reduction plan that involves a system that the Air Force is currently using. So by reducing it, we would then be stopping them from using it? I'm just wondering what that reduction plan would be
Correct. So
trying to.
the analysis would determine what pipes were really necessary and which ones aren't, if any of them are necessary.
Right.
And then determine where water can run off onto when they are removed. As far as the Air Force is concerned, if it's determined that we don't need the main pipe coming from their facilities, then the Air Force will have to seek water injection option or some other means. The DEQ has expressed that they are not against water injection, they just prefer storm sewer drainage.
So to be clear, we would be forcing them to have to stop their filtration in order to find another method of
No,
handling that water.
that would be pertaining to the second question. To the first question, depending on how the board makes the decision, they could continue until and seek a different option by the time we do a reduction, by the time we pull pipes.
Right, well, that's kind of my point. If they see in the future that the pipes are going to be pulled, clearly they're going to have to plan for not using those pipes because they won't be there anymore. So, okay, fair enough. I get it. All right. So then to your second question, which is about, what does the board think about the situation with the Air Force? Well, I'll tell you, being the RAB representative, we've heard no end of the Air Force not exactly respecting the township, respecting their agreements with the township, respecting even the repository that was owned by the township that was then destroyed. There's been a number of points there that were articulated to the Air Force and then responded to in no uncertain terms without much apology at all, actually. So I guess my thought here would be I'm not opposed to going after the Air Force. Legal action is not beyond a reasonable response, in my opinion.
What about disconnection?
Well, we have all the paperwork that shows that they've agreed to this and that they're simply not paying their bill. What would we do if it was a water customer in our own township? We would be disconnecting them. So that's an alternative as well. Or just an injunction. So you got it in this state, you can't use it anymore. Shut down the filtration plant, which is really quite sad because the whole purpose of that plant and all the money that that the taxpayers of this country spent to put that plant there for Oscoda then becomes a moot point because it's no longer functioning. And not because of us, but because of the Air Force.
Aaron, in your communications with Mr. Chermath, I like your letter, but it says the Air Force demonstrated a strong desire to not pay a fee for the use of the storm sewer despite, number one, a 2010 easement document attached here showing the Air Force agreed to pay reasonable costs for using utilities. Two, despite their continual use of the system contributing significantly to its degradation. And most important to me, three, despite them already paying these kinds of fees at other municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
Have you talk to him about these things? These are,
Yep.
what does he say?
I've been talking to him about them for 3 years.
Yeah.
And sure you've dealt with Mr. Termath. You know,
Yes, yes.
Probably, you could probably just picture
Yeah.
how he said this and come across. But yeah, he is saying that they want to do, that how it went 2 years ago was that they said they can't do it. And we said,
Legally can't do it? They can't?
they said they can't do it.
Yeah.
And we said, why not? And they said, because they won't allow us to. And I said, who is they? And they said, well, it's not people, it's just the system won't allow us to. Like, what system? Well, there's some regulations. What are those regulations? Well, I don't think that we can tell you what those are.
Classified?
They finally did provide the regulations, which had no relevance to the subject.
Are the other municipalities having the same problem? Are they trying to stop paying them as well? No.
I mean, I don't know entirely what gets negotiated other places. I just know
Right.
that they've been very difficult on ours.
Are the other municipalities military facilities like ours?
BRAC facilities, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you know that they're paying,
Yeah, they told us.
they told you.
The system that we're using for the Arrow Street right now, they said is the same system they use for other municipalities.
But they're paying other municipalities.
I don't know their payment record on them, but
Oh, okay.
Well, they were paying us for a number of months, and then all of a sudden they haven't paid on the Arrow Street plant since October. So I'm a little puzzled by that, because as I recall, when they were getting that plant ready to go, we sort of, the DEQ sort of chastised the township for giving the Air Force a hard time about the storm sewer. They wanted to, said we should just go ahead and let them use it and then work out the details later. And then I think the day before the meeting, he came in with a credit card and paid the bill to get it started. And then we've been submitting invoices, and my understanding is they've been paying it right along. Just they haven't paid since October, so they're a couple months behind. But now they want to go through the same process we want, because I remember going through the process to get negotiating with them on the Arrow Street. We had phone conferences, and you could tell they had a whole room full of lawyers in there with them. We had our one lawyer, and they kept throwing stuff at us that didn't make any sense. And eventually, we got a teleconference one day when the lawyers weren't there and got it all ironed out. So they started paying and have been paying on it up until October. And I don't know what's happened in October, but now they want to open the new plant. And, I mean, it's running, so they're putting the water in the storm sewer.
but they wanted to do the same thing the last time. They wanted to hire an engineer to evaluate the cost to confirm whether our figures were correct or not. And pretty much the overall premise was it was a delay tactic that hopefully we'd give in over time.
So do you get a sense that they're objecting to our fees, the amount of them? And they would be more amenable to some lower amount?
No,
No,
I'm getting they don't want to pay at all.
okay, all right. You talked about they have another option of injecting the bad stuff in the ground.
Good stuff into the ground.
It's the filtered
The
water.
filtered
It's
water.
the filtered water.
Filter water. Do we not have enough stuff in the ground? And you're convinced it's good stuff?
Yeah, it's filtered.
Yeah.
The tests have come back that it's functioning, the systems are functioning very well.
That's how the first gag plant is operating. The one out by the,
Yep.
Yeah, they had an initial proposal on the Arrow Street to do groundwater injection, and then they changed. And they wanted to use that large lot that's between the community center and the library.
I was going to ask you where they were going to do that.
But then along the way, they switched to the storm sewer.
Do we know of anybody that using that injection system now?
Oh, no, we do. The fire training site, FT02, uses groundwater injection by Clark's Marsh.
But not the gallons of water that bagpipe's gonna push up.
I don't remember the rates from FT02.
I'm concerned.
That's a pretty good amount.
We start pushing thousands, tens of thousands of gallons through there an hour.
Yeah.
100,000 gallons a day into the sand.
Yeah.
We're gonna have sinkholes.
I think the theory, I think the theory
We're gonna have
is,
something.
I think the theory is, Martin, that it replaces water that they take out.
Yeah, because they're already pulling all that water up, and then they're just putting it down the other side of the extraction curtain.
Yeah.
I'd have to see it to believe it. I'd have to see it to believe it. There's no way they're pulling that water and putting it at the same level. Ejecting it down to the same level and not creating any problems. Just a thought I had.
So I'm looking for guidance here from the board as to how to proceed.
If we can determine who uses the system, who benefits from this system, and if parts of it can be eliminated, I'm for that. Less to maintain, hopefully the same level of service to whoever's using it now or benefiting from it now. The cost to determine that is a lot to me. I've got the Fleece and Vandenberg one here. I didn't notice a row proposal. So
That was the one I emailed to all the board members.
I may have overlooked it. Obviously, this one seems to be less, but that's still quite a lot. It's at least something for me to consider that amount of money. Because again, I just, in real general terms here, I like the idea of reducing the amount of infrastructure we need to maintain, especially if it's a wash service-wise or functionality-wise. The cost to get there seems large, but those are my thoughts in general terms right now.
But we'll have to do the analysis anyways.
Sure, and I guess I'll have to consider that further. You said that it's coming down the pipe from the state of Michigan?
From class action attorneys.
So it's lawsuits that are driving this.
The one caution I would have is that currently we have 3 operational gag plants here on the base. It was stated at some meeting I was at that in order to more quickly clean this up, it could require up to 10 to 15 gag plants. And if the DEQ is more in favor of emptying that water into the storm sewer, I think we would need to consider where we're taking pipes out so that's not an area where a new gag plant would be going in where they would need access to the storm sewer. So as long as that's would be part of the determination, that'd be fine. I looked at these 2 proposals, and I really think we certainly need a combination of both, because we need to identify, I noticed, just reading through this real quickly, in the F&V report, they're talking about, it said something in here about 14 miles of storm sewer. That's that's a lot of pipe underground. And in Rose's proposal, number 1, they are going to have a survey crew to locate existing drainage structures connecting to the exiting outfalls and so forth. In the proposal 2, inventory gathering, they will use existing storm sewer maps. So I guess my question is, how accurate are our maps?
Right.
I have no idea. So if we had maps, then I don't know why they would need to do the surveys, but maybe they're 2 different things. But I think and it's a considerable amount of money, over $120,000 for these two options, but part of what they're proposing is an inspection of all the sewer lines to know what kind of condition they're in. So I think that number one is important for us to know what we're looking at, because they've been in the ground a long time. And these aren't things that, you know, deteriorate over a month or two, but they've been in there a long time, so I think that would be important to, number one, find out where they all are, and then number two, have a look inside to see what kind of condition they're in. So, and perhaps if we take on some of these things, it could give us leverage on the Air Force to show that, you know, they need to be paying for this because these are expenses that we're incurring and will incur in the future. So.
Do you think leaning on our political, two senators, a new governor, new attorney general, U.S. congressman?
Already done a lot of leaning on all of them.
Okay. You get nothing, or you get,
They're getting nothing.
okay,
Eagle has already reviewed all of these documents and has expressed to the Air Force that they should be paying.
Mhm.
And the Air Force has told them that they haven't paid up to this point, why should they pay again?
You mean that they've gotten away with it for a few months, and therefore that creates a,
No, they hadn't paid since 2010,
oh, I see.
so why should they pay at all?
Wow.
So, and if the system has to get replaced, you're talking millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, sure.
If you're talking a class action lawsuit, you're talking several $100,000 in a settlement, plus several million to work the system.
All right.
I'd rather just work the system and
Right.
get our analysis and get a plan together for managing it.
Well, looking at it as a basic question of, is anybody on the board opposed to us pursuing payment with the Air Force?
I want you to pursue it.
Yeah.
Legally?
I go after it.
Well, I guess the other side of that question is, what's the reality, honestly? Do you really think we're going to win it? Or get them to at least, you know, some type of payment, if it's not the full payment?
They've been more responsive to lawsuits than they have to meetings.
Wow.
They pay other people, like you said. I mean,
Yeah. That's also
We sh-
precedent too.
yeah, exactly. And they started paying us. They said they would pay us.
Yep. Yep.
Reach a contract.
It's a breach of contract, yeah, totally. Yep. And it's not even just a contract, it's in the deed. It's like they agreed to it. We didn't slip it in on them.
I'm not opposed to pursuing payment. If it comes to the point of legally pursuing payment, I'd want to get some counsel on that
Yep.
regarding the realisticness of being successful. You know,
Right.
the avenue we pursue,
Sure.
things like those
Right.
things.
Yep.
So not off the table for me, but I definitely want to do it slowly and cautiously and
Right.
Yep.
And obviously, you know,
strategically.
include legal costs when we win.
Thank you. I agree with that. Because the Air Force hasn't reimbursed us for anything.
Anything.
Up until
right.
now.
And they're not going to go, okay, here's a check.
Is the Air Force currently operating the Mission Street facility for PFAS?
Yes.
Okay. Was there ever time that there was never a time they quit pumping and treating for like TCE. It's been running this whole time?
Yes.
Okay. But now
They
it is
stopped treating for TCE, but they continued to
pumping
pump and dump.
because of the PFAS to try and,
No. The pump and dump was because DEQ, for some reason, even though DEQ felt that the TCE levels or whatever volatiles were there were low enough that they no longer needed to treat. I think this was in 2012. They no longer needed to treat, but they did still have to pump and dump for years after. And I don't know the reasoning behind that.
okay. But now it's equipped to treat PFAS and it's operational?
Yes.
In that regard? Okay. And they're using the storm sewer.
Yes.
The plan that you've laid out here, if we take up one of the two quotes and create an asset management plan or a reduction plan, what kind of time frame do you envision for that? And is this an immediate thing or how far into the future?
This will probably take 6 to 8 months to complete. They're going to have to camera the lines.
So, but you're talking about immediate starting and then being done 6 to 8 months? Okay. My only thought is with the price tag is I'm not opposed to the idea. I want to consider it further considering the costs associated with it, put it in that capital improvement plan kind of deal. We have so many costs associated with water, the water infrastructure, the sewer infrastructure. Those, I get the important aspect of the storm sewer, but the sewer and water seem more critical. And to prioritize certain projects, I think I'd want to think about that more or plan it a little bit more. So with the immediacy of the numbers attached to these plans, I wouldn't be in favor of doing those right now. Maybe discuss it more, plan for it a bit. As for handling the Air Force, your second question, I'm okay pursuing payment and engaging in conversation to where it leads. I don't know, because I see that delaying the proposal you put out tonight doesn't provide us a solution with the Air Force in the immediate sense. So I'm trying to answer your two questions and move the discussion along, I guess. So the plans I'd like to plan for and put off a bit into the future. Handling the Air Force, I'd like to continue to negotiate, but by whatever means we can negotiate. Those are my answers to your questions, just in the hope to move the conversation.
My other concern with getting an asset management plan done soon is that we do know that we have root intrusion in the system, and if we have another blockage that creates flooding again because of the Air Force discharge, and the costs of liabilities associated with that.
Yep. I haven't had a chance to look at this F&V proposal that we just got tonight. I did read through the row proposal. Do you have an idea of why there's such a huge difference in cost?
No, but I got to give both of them credit here. They had very little information to go off of in a very short amount of time, so that I can bring something to the board.
There's a considerable difference between roughly 120,000 and 473,000.
I would also like to find out if the airport authority would like to have one also. Maybe they can be done at the same time. Maybe that'll add to the economy of scale. Because they also own a few storm sewer lines.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Aaron, do you have a sense for how much money is the Air Force in arrears with us? Or rather, behind in payments with us? Has that been calculated?
At least $7,200.
Okay.
It's about $2,400. Well, that doesn't include
$24.20 a month.
Mission Street, just for the
Right.
Aero Street.
Right, that's correct, yeah. So those would be unfortunately two different topics, wouldn't they? I mean, if we were to have to pursue them, they would be pursued separately, not together.
Not necessarily falls under the same storm sewer ordinance.
Oh, okay. And how much is the other that accumulates back to 2010?
That one, we haven't sought back pay for that. We've only sought from the time that they brought the plants online for PFAS treatment to then charge for the storm sewer. Kind of a phased-in approach.
Sure.
Are you saying to consider?
Well, I'm
Back
looking
pay?
at it. I mean, it's like, what are we actually pursuing? Are we actually pursuing roughly $7,200? Or are we pursuing, just picking a random number, $50,000, $100,000, whatever it is? I don't know. What are we pursuing?
Right, can almost use it as a bargaining chip and then say, okay, well, then we'll settle for what you just owe us for the last 3 months and move forward.
Right. We haven't given them, we haven't released them of that obligation since 2010. As you said, it was just a phased-in approach, but it wasn't that we ever released them of obligation to pay. So,
All right, any other comments?
Haven't they been using the Mission Street water into the sewer system since the base closed?
I think so.
So,
The earliest easement, though, I have regarding that is 2010.
2010. But isn't there argument that we weren't charging them before, so why are we charging them now? That does, not a very good argument, in my opinion, but it's a system we have to maintain. I mean, if they, like you said, there's root intrusion, and if all of a sudden it plugs up and they can't pump, 500,000 gallons of water through there, they'll have to shut down, then it'll be a problem. So,
right.
seems to me it's to their benefit.
On another note, or same note, but kind of a something I just thought of here. The Air Force, since they were talking about the Mission Street plant a year ago, I have been talking to them the whole time about when are you going to get with us regarding paying for using the storm sewer so that we don't go through the same mess we went through on Arrow Street. Yeah, we'll get with you, and they never did.
Okay.
But in the BCT meetings that they have every month, in those minutes that we just got a few months ago, last summer, they were asking the DEQ to help them in regards to the paying for using the storm sewer. I don't know what that meant, but Eagle kept saying, you need to get with the township on that, and they still never did. Then I also provided you guys in your email the letter from Sue Aller that said she asked the question, because I was telling Eagle, when you permit somebody to utilize another municipality's infrastructure, it should be based on the condition of that you have permission from that municipality. And Eagle has told me all along, we can't legally do that. Sue Aller asked the question, hey, can you put conditions on these permits? And they said, yes, we do it all the time.
Wow. Unbelievable. Depends on who you talk to.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
All right, so what I'll do is I will bring back to the board regarding the legalities of pursuing payment. And then see what kind of pricing options there are if the airport were to contribute to also being a part of this, so that their storm sewer and our storm sewer are done at the same time.
I see.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll work.
sure.
And maybe some clarification on the difference between Rose's proposal and F&B's. That's a lot of money difference
Yeah.
for what appears to be the same thing. Hope it is. Maybe they're, he's proposing something more involved, I don't know.
I have one final question I just thought of. Your narrative, the three options the board has, one references a storm sewer asset management plan, one references a storm sewer reduction plan. These quotes we have, these are for the storm sewer asset management plan? Is that correct?
This one's for the asset management plan, this one's for the reduction.
Okay, so if we did the reduction, it would only be that 60. Or 59.7. Is that correct?
Not positive on that.
Okay.
Because I think, let me confirm with them, because if
Okay.
we're talking that we're gonna do a combination, is that, I'm guessing that's what everybody's preference is?
If a combination is necessary, my preference would be reduction, but if that's not totally feasible, to just phase out. And I don't know that without an engineer to tell me that. So I guess that's where my question is coming from, is I'm not really a fan of, unless it's completely necessary, the storm sewer asset management plan and then the high costs associated and maintaining that into the future. My preference would be to reduce, and if there's a cost savings versus these proposals and a reduction plan, if it doesn't cost as much to figure out what it takes to just reduce
Okay.
versus assessing the whole system and then reducing. I just want
Understand.
to, okay,
I'm tracking with that.
all right.
John, are you thinking that then the goal in your mind is to remove the storm sewer system at some point down the road or by some point in time?
I don't know what that kind of project entails. I don't know if you have to pull the pipe or if it can stay. I don't know. I guess some of the questions I need to have answered. Disassociating ourselves with unnecessary infrastructure or little used or low value infrastructure.
And I have offered the Air Force to take ownership of the pipes, and they strongly declined that.
Yeah.
Their pipe,
Probably because it would cost them money to maintain it.
right. No kidding. Unbelievable.
All right, so I'll get better clarification on these proposals here. As far as assessing and reducing. All right, any other comments for that?
Yep, thank you.
Resolution and ordinances. 2020-01 Civil Infraction Officer.
All right, so you see a memo dated January 23rd from the new zoning administrator, Mr. Eric Szymanski. And in there, Resolution 2020-01 states that the zoning administrator job description provides that the primary responsibility of the position is enforcement of the township code and ordinance. The Township of Oscoda Board of Trustees does hereby appoint Eric Szymanski to serve as the Charter Township of Oscoda Civil Infraction Enforcement Officer.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 2020-01 Civil Infraction Officer.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes,
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Resolution 2020-02, Michigan CDBG application for water main funding support and authorization.
All right, so as was previously reported, the Michigan Strategic Fund has about $10 million associated for the next 3 years for what they call infrastructure and resiliency. This is competitive funding round this year and the 2 years after. Each of the projects to be awarded can be up to $1.7 million in CDBG funds. What we're requesting is a $1.7 million project to place new water main. And again, this is on Oscoda Street, Van Etten Drive, Oak Lane, Oscoda Street, and it gives the different proportions on there, Beach Street and Green Street. So out of the chunks that can be extended in the area of concern, those are identified as being able to be completed for $1.7 million. Now, the catch to this is a match, and there is a match of $346,000 associated with that in Resolution 2020-02.
Comments?
How soon would we have to have the local match?
So the application is due at the end of the week, and we would know further in March whether that's a go or not. Obviously, if we wouldn't get the project this year, we would be applying in the next 2 years. However, we're in a pretty good position that we haven't mapped out how much it costs for the water main in the area of concern. Again, we have the preliminary engineering. We would have to go through the design engineering. Being that this is a priority for the township, if we're awarded up to the $1.7 million project, we would be assembling as quickly as possible to get that infrastructure installed.
With the $1.7 million, a CDBG, is that going to act differently than the USDA grants where we'll get the money completely up front with the CDBG, or will we have to submit for reimbursements?
Typically a CDBG is a submit for reimbursement. We have 2 projects for CDBG. That's why there's 2 funds associated with that. It's like 394, 395. We'd have to, again, create a different fund and dedicate that fund within our chart of accounts to the CDBG project. So all expenditures associated with there would be booked into that fund, and then revenue we receive for that would be booked into the CDBG fund.
So where do we plan on expending that money out of upfront? Out of 591, out of water?
So to be able to fund the project,
Correct.
we would have to fund the project to be able to get started. As far as 591, we would have to create some sort of transfer from 591 to get started and reimburse that through the CDBG fund.
Dave, am I right that there's some surveying done on these streets already?
Yeah, that's how they've come up with the components associated with how much it would cost.
Yeah.
And estimates on how that would cost and the number of hookups in each one of those
Who's doing the work?
row. And that spreadsheet was provided the board last year as far as all those different components. So this is phase 1, this is phase 2, and then they labeled that, phase A through J, and gave the different components of that, all affected by the area of concern.
I've had a couple of people that live on Oak Street in particular that, have noticed surveyor activity there. And this is the same grant project that Rick from Rowe said, boy, you guys have a decent chance on this.
A lot of the other communities are honestly scrambling to get engineering done, whereas we're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And so for the first year, you're going to see a lot more applications next year in the third year versus the first year.
I see.
And so we're in good position that we've done
Yeah.
our homework on these projects.
Okay, good. Good to hear. So,
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
yeah, I'll make the motion that we adopt Resolution 2020-02, the CDBG application for water main fundings, support, and authorization.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Osable River Canoe Marathon advertisement order form.
All right, so what you see here, typically the township takes out a full-page ad associated with the program book for the canoe marathon. Keeping with that, the full-page ad is $500, and copy the ad, and everything is due March 1st, 2020.
Comments?
Yeah, I move that we go ahead with the full-page ad. I mean, there's two towns that are really the main focus of this whole race, Grayling and Oscoda.
Is there support?
I'll support that.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings?
Yeah, yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Gieske?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes. Motion's passed. Art on the Beach, request from the chamber.
All right, so you'll see a letter dated February 1st of 2020, and this is from Megan Smith, who's the president of the Oscoda Ensemble Chamber of Commerce, and what you'll see in there is the request for the Art on the Beach. This would be the 37th annual Art on the Beach, and it is scheduled for June 20th and 21st, 2020.
Comments?
That 20th and 21st is a Saturday and a Sunday? Or is it a Friday and a Saturday?
I'm looking.
The Saturday and Sunday, what they have on there is the
Saturday, Sunday.
20th and the 21st.
No
They
Friday.
normally set up on a Friday.
Yeah.
They're looking at 3 days, not 2. That's what you should have submitted for.
Okay.
Yeah, the last line there does say most setup is done on Friday,
Right.
but then says June 20th.
Yeah,
So
it needs to be for the 3 days.
That'd be for the 3 days.
Okay.
I think the way this is worded, she's just trying to describe the event itself being on the 20th and 21st. And then she's expanding it by saying the takedown and the setup. So I think she's got it. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of words there.
I see one of the requests, they're requesting township bleachers. Do we still have bleachers?
We do.
We do? Okay. I thought at some point somebody said we don't have those anymore. but-
That's what I thought too.
We have them out at the soccer field,
Yeah.
sports complex.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request from the chamber for Art on the Beach.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yep.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Parade request for 4th of July from the chamber.
All right, so again, you see a letter dated February 1st from Megan Smith, and this is associated with the 4th of July Parade 2020. They're requesting the use of Furtaw Field as the staging area at 9 a.m. and with the standard parade route as last year for 2018 and 2019.
Comments?
Do we know, has there been feedback on the new location? If people like it, it works out better, it works out good? From the police or the chamber itself?
I have not obtained that feedback.
What's that, the staging?
Yeah.
When we did the was involved with the Lions float for the Christmas parade. That seemed to work real smooth, but most of the floats lined up on Lake Street and some of the cross streets there, and then they would just feed out onto. Really didn't use Furtaw Field all that much. We just had the floats. But we were of course, we were the last float, so we just waited for everybody else to go out, and the police had the street blocked there in front of Furtaw Field, and we just pulled out. And seemed to go real smooth.
Just curious.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request from the chamber for the 4th of July parade.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed.
Does the chamber have to deal with MDOT for the use of US 23 also? But that's their problem, right?
The township does.
Oh, you
Township
don't?
does it.
that?
Mhm.
Okay.
We discussed
In that
everything
last
in the policy
paragraph, it
committee.
talks
I remember
about
that
getting
now.
assistance from the chamber for the, from the township for the permit.
Okay.
We've done that historically.
All right, resignation of Samantha Michaud.
All right, so you have a letter dated the 29th of January, and Ms. Michaud has received a position full-time with the Iosco County Central Dispatch, so it's a full-time position.
It's unfortunate. I'm glad for her, but I'm sorry she's leaving.
Any comments?
Do we plan on posting the position again?
Yeah, so I'm working with the police chief and fire chief to talk about how we're gonna structure a position to post for.
I move we accept the resignation of Samantha Michaud.
Support. With regrets.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Gauge availability of for consolidated municipal building for a work session. Overall, the primary thing that we're looking for here is if the board wants to proceed, and then if the board does, how to proceed.
So when this says consolidated,
This-
for a consolidation,
Yeah.
I misread that. I apologize. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, this is not about township consolidation.
No. I thought it was in conjunction with another board, so.
So, we've had several work sessions on this. A lot of information brought out about it, and now I guess we're at the point to determine, does the board want to proceed with a consolidated municipal building? And if we don't, if they want to be brought up at a later time, is this the time to discuss consolidated municipal building or postpone it for a while? Or if the board does want to proceed, then we can go into a work session to discuss a location or any other details. But I think we're at the point now where we've got to, it's time to determine whether we're going to do something with this or not.
I agree with that. I think the time's come. I had asked a question of the architect and engineer at the last work session, and I still need to get an answer on. So I'll have to follow up with them again on that. But if you're looking for a direction tonight, without that, I mean, I can vote, but I'm still looking for That question I posed was the estimated cost to run a proposed facility of that square footage.
I guess I have to say that when this topic first came up, what, a year ago, whenever came up in a work session, when Salvo was there. I don't know, I feel like, quite a lot has happened since then, and I'm not sure I'm as interested in the topic as I was then, just for right now. I mean, I feel like there's been a lot of information. I think it's been valuable. We've had a lot of community input. We certainly have had a lot of feedback from the community, but I think just given, I think my trepidation on this is what we're already looking at having to spend money on. I'm starting to feel like I'd like to know, I'd almost like to put this question off a little bit. I'd like to know whether the aerospace opportunity comes in. I'd like to know whether we have something coming up down the road that could fuel this a little differently than what we have today with what is in our hands today. I don't know. I feel like that's where I'm just coming from on that. I don't feel strong financially to be jumping into that project right now. But I think it has merit. But I just feel like I would like to see putting it off a little bit until we know where our income's going to be coming from, if we're going to get more income, if there's going to be more opportunity, and I don't know. That's where I'm kind of thinking on that right now.
I agree with Tim.
Not, there's been a lot of community input, like you said.
Yeah.
But my take is that the community input has been about the location.
Yeah.
More than the need for the consolidated building. Somewhat to that, but, I don't know if, like you talked about, I think you mentioned space and so forth. And I've heard a lot of people talk about comparing East Tavis's building on Newman Street Community Center. Very nice facility.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't understand that the fire department and the police department are not a part of that building that they think is so nice.
That's correct.
And it's a huge building, but yet their fire department and, of course, the Tawas Area Police Authority is not a part of that.
That's right.
And as I understand it, what we're kind of talking about is everything in that building.
Yeah.
That's one of my concerns about Furtaw Field and parking that would be involved. So I don't know.
Well, that's why I look at this from the cost viewpoint, because it's supposed to be a combined building, a facility that's going to include everything.
Yeah.
And that then justifies the cost savings. I feel like, well, yeah, we can save money, but we're going to have to spend a chunk of money before we can save money. And that's what I'm not comfortable with just at this moment. But I think that, in just a couple of weeks, we might be in a different situation. So when I say a delay, I'm not saying 6 months. I'm just saying, let's pick another date to discuss this and see where things stand. And hopefully this aerospace decision isn't delayed again.
And the $1.7 million for water project.
That's right. We're not done with all that yet.
No, we've just scratched the surface.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm okay with, especially given the immediacy of the spaceport, the launch initiative that you referenced. hopefully, the hopeful immediacy of that decision, and that it'll come in phases, but an indication should be coming shortly. My concern with postponing this decision on Furtaw Field for too long is that I think we need to be decisive and decide if we're going to use Furtaw Field or not. And if we're not, I think we, the township, need to pivot and capture some of this enthusiasm and support for the field and develop it into a park or something. The last thing I want to come from all this is Furtaw Field to stay empty for a further prolonged period. That's part of, honestly, this board talked about using, developing it into a park, and I was very supportive of that. I want to do that. Then we prioritized the list of parks, and then the discussion about the consolidated building. Using Furtaw Field is very appealing to me. At this point, using it is very appealing to me. I'm supportive of a park. I was before. The idea of consolidated buildings, intriguing. Again, I want some numbers still, but using Furtaw Field, developing that, impacting our area is really important to me. So I think we should be decisive as to what we're going to do with it. A short delay, I mean, we've waited a long time. The public might be frustrated to hear me say a short delay is okay with me, but it is. But I think the board needs to be decisive. And then commit to doing something and do it. And again, I think that there's a lot of public enthusiasm and energy surrounding the field right now that we could leverage and use and partner in. So,
As far as the consolidated building, though, regardless of location, where are you with that?
me personally, waiting on the numbers to see what it would cost to operate the building, and then comparing those numbers against what it costs to operate the different buildings that we occupy for those services and comparing them.
'Cause I'm just looking for consensus here,
Sure.
so I know whether Mr. Schaefer here needs to be pulled from the project or pursued from the project, so we can
Until I have
manage our
those-
workload.
Until I have those numbers, it's more difficult for me to make a decision. So I can follow up again with the engineer architect to get those.
Mr. Gajewski?
I kind of agree with Tim and Jamie as far as, agree with Tim for a short postponement, but I also agree with them about this infrastructure, where we getting all this money from to match all these grants if they all come through. Like Jamie said, this is just the surface. This can balloon into something a lot bigger than what we anticipate.
Mr. Palmer?
Well, I'm kind of with Mr. Nordine there. I'd like to see something done with Furtaw Field. Although my preference, I know originally we talked about, we got estimates from Beckett and Rader for improving 3 of our parks, Furtaw Field being one of those, because at that point we hadn't considered anything about a town hall consolidated building. What I would prefer to see is the money that we're going to appropriate for a park on Furtaw Field, take that money and split it between Ratliff Park and the beach park, and move ahead with those projects that we talked about. A consolidated building on Furtaw Field is a completely separate issue that grants are available for, parts of that building to do that project. I'm not opposed to holding off to see where our finances are in terms of all the infrastructure work that we're going to be doing and the water lines. I think, certainly extending our water mains are probably our top priority issue right now. So if we want to put this off for a few months, I'm fine with that, although I would like to, maybe it would be helpful to have a work session where we could, just kind of discuss this whole issue a little further in terms of, locations and what would be involved. But if we want to put that off for a few months, I'm fine with that. I know it was proposed, I think the first talk we had from Gavin Brown from MAMA when the Michigan Loss Initiative, we had our first meeting, and he was proposing that when they come into an area, they can help with improvements to all sorts of things, like they would be putting money into the area. Maybe one of those areas would be a new Township Hall and Community Center, library, and senior center combination. So I think if we were in line and received that nod for the launch here, it'd be a big boost for our area, and maybe that, like I say, putting it off for a little while and see where that's going might help us with making a determination. Just
Okay, well then, we can forego scheduling a work session, and the board can let me know when you're ready to pursue it further.
Yeah, my suggestion would be maybe in a month, or let's make a contingent on when we hear the aerospace decision. Let's do it in some respect like that, so it's not,
We can do
Just
that, but
lost.
even if we get the notice, even if we do get selected for Michigan, it could be 14 months before we hear from the FAA whether we will actually be a spaceport.
well, fair enough, but any first action we take on this isn't going to be breaking ground anyway, so I think it's still a matter of, we could continue the topic, and we could continue to talk about locations and carry the topic forward.
Okay.
I would be more comfortable with a date to reconsider, so it's not left open-ended and continues on. Very important to me, before this board's term, our collective terms are up, a decision, at least, now the board will be different, and it could change, it could overturn whatever decision we make, but decisiveness is important to me, like, in this, and I don't want to just continue on and on.
So then I propose March 9th, so we just push it out a month, first meeting in March. How's that?
That's fantastic with me. By that time, I should have the numbers I've been seeking.
Cool, excellent.
Dave, do you have an idea when we would hear on the CDBG grant?
It will be later than March 9th.
Okay.
All right, next subject, the annual groundwater regulatory fee.
All right, so this is an agenda addition, and what you have in front of you that I handed out is the a detail of $3,650. Same thing we paid in 2019 and 2018. So basically, we pay the state of Michigan associated with the groundwater annual permit fee, and this comes out of Sewer Fund 590-000-827.000 regulatory fees.
Any comments?
This is the permit for the lagoon system? I think we probably need to pay that.
Yeah.
Is that a motion, Bill?
I will make that a motion.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings, Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, we're into our second public comment period. There's a 4-minute time limit, and when you come up, please introduce yourself. Does anybody have anything? All right, board comments. Anybody have anything?
Looks like we're looking at Wednesday, March 18th for the next RAB meeting. Here in the library, the usual 5 to 7, but they're scheduling an hour early open house from 4 to 5. So,
Anybody else?
I've got a couple things. Taxes are due this Friday, February 14th. And and after that, there's a 3% penalty that'll be added, but you still have until March 2nd at 5 o'clock to pay that in the Oscoda Township Treasurer's Office. If you have any questions, give us a call. Be sure to check the top right-hand corner of your winter tax bill. There would be a message there saying that you have summer taxes owing also, if that's the case. And you can reach us at 739-7471. I'd also like to take this time to congratulate the Oscoda varsity basketball team on another fabulous season, and Braden Malik for reaching his 1,000-point goal.
Yeah, good for him.
Go Owls.
And just one comment from the Planning Commission. We recently did a preliminary site plan approval for Phoenix Composite. They want to build a new 40,000 square foot building. So that's a positive thing, I think, for our township, for our businesses to be expanding. So, like I said, it was a preliminary site plan. They'll have to come back with a more detailed plan, but they were basically looking to see whether or not we would grant them permission for that building, and we did based on what they want to do there. So, good things happening.
Stay in the current building they're in?
Yes.
Besides the
Yes.
40,000?
This will be additional.
I just had a question. There's a flasher where Skeel Avenue intersects with F-41, and I think it's a multi-directional flasher. And I think some of the directions work, but the most important one, when you're coming from town looking for the entrance, that's not working.
Oh, really?
No, I didn't, in driving in here this evening, it was dark. There were no flash. I think it works like if you're coming from your direction, going on, you get an action. So I think consumers needs to be, if I'm right on that, in
It's MDOT, Jim.
MDOT.
Road
okay.
Commission.
Yeah.
362-4433.
Did you want to contact them about that?
Jamie, go Jamie.
The numbers girl.
Well, I think that's in Dave's purview, kind of.
I can let them know.
Yeah.
Absentee ballots for the presidential primary election are available in the clerk's office. Just need to fill out an application to get a ballot, and then we can either hand it to you in person if you have an ID and are there in person, or mail it. So election is March 10th.
I gave another budget submission to the state for the water mains of $4.9 million. Last year I requested $8 million, and I haven't heard that we received any portion of that. So. All right, anything else? I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned.